And welcome everybody to the State of Affairs, Serbian Radio Chicago in partnership with Sava PAC. We are talking to political leaders, political candidates, and different people who are involved in the daily political landscape. I am honored today to have two guests, the ladies of the Jexit movement, which I've had a pleasure of meeting on several occasions. Michelle LUBIN TERRIS and SOFIA MANOLESCO, welcome to the show. So glad you are with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. What a pleasure, an honor. Thank you.
So ladies, tell me first, what is Jexit?
Would you like me to start?
Sure, Michelle, go ahead. You're the founder, you're the president, so take that one away.
Jexit started with the belief in wanting to educate our fellow Jews about the dangerous shift that the Democrat Party has taken to the far left. So Jexit stands for Jews exiting the Democrat Party. That's how it started, but it took an interesting turn because the Democrat Party has actually Jexited from the Jews. And now we're trying to explain to our fellow Jews how dangerous that shift has become and that they are being basically used and just abandoned. That's
interesting. Now, I would like to delve a bit into that history of why do you think that the Jewish community has had such a loyalty to the Democratic Party over the years, and what has shifted, in fact? What brought on that seismic change, it seems, to the Democratic Party that we have all known? What we think that the party of the JFK is no longer, even traditionally Democrat Serbs are exiting, especially in this past election. So what has changed within the Democratic Party?
The Democratic Party has, I think our country has been under the attack of a communist Marxist movement for many, many years. It's just that this particular time, this movement has infiltrated the party, but from lower local levels and up, while we've been asleep at the wheel, basically. Americans have never really had to they never really suffered like the Serbs or like what Sofia has gone through. So in a way, we're a little bit complacent in terms of not really knowing what's going on at a local level. And we're discovering some very alarming things that we're seeing in as far as in the school board, in the county level, the legislatures. You see what's went on during the election. So now we're kind of trying to play catch up and really find out what is going on in our country today.
Yeah,
and that's an interesting notion, Sophia. I'd like to actually introduce you through your background. You have an interesting background, and tell us about your plight personally, how you came to this country, where you were born. I know we share so much in common, but your story is particularly interesting in this aspect.
Well, thank you very much. I was born in communist Romania under Ceausescu's dictatorship. Of course, at the time, the country was called the Socialist Republic of Romania, because the communists don't like to call themselves communists. They hide behind the word socialist because they have to infiltrate, and they have to infiltrate societies slowly like a cancer, which is what they've done in the United States. My personal story, I was born, like I was saying, in Bucharest, in communist Romania. And when I was 11 years old, my family fled the communist regime, and we went through France and Canada. I grew up in Canada, and I came to the United States almost 30 years ago after my American dream, because I believed in the American dream, which is something that, as nice as Canada was at the time, compared to what it is now, there was no American dream. And so I came to the United States and I became a naturalized citizen, a proud American. And I never thought that I would leave communist Romania and make it all the way to the United States of America and have to fight the communists. It's absolutely mind-boggling how they have infiltrated the American government at high levels and local levels and infiltrated all of our institutions. And they've gone from the infiltration to the kinetic phase. So now we're seeing them come out in the streets, be violent. We see that even though businesses were looted and burned all over the country by communist organizations such as Black Lives Matter and Antifa, we see that the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, was actually part of bailing those evildoers out of jail. We see that the actual so-called president, because I believe that the election was stolen, but Joe Biden honoring Black Lives Matter by having the American embassies fly the Black Lives Matter flag. To me, that is like being conquered. It's absolutely what it is. He's admitting defeat. This is what he's doing, and Americans haven't figured that out yet. And so it's disturbing to watch, but we don't have a choice. We have to step up and begin to educate people quickly and take our country back from the bottom up, just like they infiltrated. We have to do the same thing. We have to take our country back.
Sure. And Sophia, so that is interesting, especially in terms of Romania, former Yugoslavia, also was a socialist country at the time. But although it was an interesting mix, an interesting balance, because Yugoslavia was not behind the Iron Curtain, but of course we border Romania, so we very much remember the plight of the Romanian people at the time during Ceausescu regime. But you also, I noticed something, and if you don't mind sharing, even within your screen name on your email, you have that Hagia Sophia. So just the background, the Romanian background and the Christian orthodoxy and the relationship to Judaism, which we are so closely related. And I have to say, especially in the Balkans, where the Jews were prosecuted, so were the Serbs, and vice versa. So we share so much history together.
Yes, we do. And it really, I always say that it is the Judeo-Christian religion because it begins with the Torah, the Old Testament. That's what the Torah is. A lot of Christians don't know that. But it begins with the Old Testament and it goes all the way until the New Testament. And so it's a continuation of a religion. The Christian Orthodox religion is indeed very close to the old rite of Christianity, just as it was beginning to branch out of Judaism. So the two are very, very close. We're talking about the Hagia Sophia, Sophia the Wise, which was a cathedral. It was the center of Christianity in the East. And from there, the Christian church split and went to Rome. But the Hagia Sophia was a cathedral, and it was later on transformed into a mosque in Istanbul. It was a cathedral in Constantinople, and then it became a mosque in Istanbul, and then it became a museum, and recently it was turned into a mosque again. And so the reason why I like to use that in my email is because I would like to spread Christianity, not shrink it.
Absolutely.
That the Judeo-Christian values are very important. And
that is what our country was founded on.
Yes, and I have not forgotten that the original Hagia Sophia was a cathedral and a monument to Orthodoxy.
And thank you for that. And that I think that is very important to stress. So Michelle, you have been doing an incredible work. You have rallies consistently. You are doing that grassroots outreach. What is the response that you are getting from your Jewish community? Because as we were just talking about, and I think the perception generally is that Jews always stick together, and us other communities look up to the Jews and look up to Israel and saying, look how strong they are when they're attacked. They're always together, even though they may have political differences, but when Israel is attacked, everybody sticks together. They are strong. They have a strong lobby. Is that truly the case? What has been the response from the community now that the shift is happening?
Well, it's an interesting situation because when you look at it from an Israel standpoint, yes, they're united. The left may not like Netanyahu and the right may have, not like this or that. But when it comes to defending their country and the national interests, right, they rally However, come fast forward to America, we're finding something very unique. American Jews don't care about Israel. It shows in the polls. Every talking point that I can give you with the polls, it shows that most Jews vote left because the vast majority of Jews really don't care about Judaism or Israel. They're secular left. To pick up where Sophia left off, one of the most fascinating and something I'm very proud of, and I think Sophia would agree with me, is that our organization gives homage and thanks, and we're grateful to our Christian American brothers and sisters. Why? Because they love Jews in Israel more than the American left. And they're the ones who are coming to our rallies. They're the ones waving the Israeli flag. They're the ones that 12:3 bless Israel and you will be blessed, curse Israel and you will be cursed. And it's interesting how they're the ones that are going on the front of the line with us, and we're grateful and we share that message, and we're very proud to be able to share that message. Wouldn't you agree, Sophia?
Yes, absolutely. We are united with our Christian brothers and sisters. Jexit is all inclusive. We have Jews and we have Christians, and we support Israel, the Holy Land, because it represents Western civilization, our civilization of Judeo-Christian values, which is now under attack by these godless people.
And that is interesting about Jexit. What I've noticed, it's not only concentrated on the Jewish community, and not even just, of course, Jews and Christians, but all the minority communities that have somehow throughout history been left in the dark. They have flocked to your organizations. And I think that is very unique, what you're doing. It's very different. You are able to gather a very unique group of people in support of the Judeo-Christian values.
Well, and also Sophia, when we first started, we would always say, Israel is our insurance policy, because if anything, this isn't our home, because it can always be the rug can be pulled out from under us. Look how it happens all over.
Yes, and
the world. You think, oh, never here. It's never going to happen here. Now, fast forward, look what's happening in New York and recently today in Las Vegas. It's happening. So the other thing is, the other message that we always share is, hey, you know what? We're just the canary in the coal mine, because once they remove us, they're coming after all of you. You're not immune or exempt from this hatred. They're coming after all of you.
Well, they plan on having a communist revolution, and they've already started marching. And we know that Black Lives Matter has pledged allegiance to, the Free Palestine movement. We know that it's the red line, green line alliance between the communists and radical Islam. We don't only see it in our government between Bernie Sanders and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. We see it on a larger scale, on the world scale. And it's becoming more and more clear that this is what's going on. And as they look to establish this violent, kinetic part of a communist revolution, this is where Jews are very much endangered. There's only 15 million Jews in the world. I always like to say this in the beginning of any interview. There are 15 million Jews in the world. Half of them live in Israel. Most of the other half lives in the United States. When we have people like fake Jew only by birth, Bernie Sanders, have resolutions not to arm Israel, what they're actually voting on. And by the way, these are the same people who were doing the boycott, divestment sanctions movement, which was to isolate Israel. Right. And they wanted to isolate Israel economically. These same people are now signing proposals not to arm Israel, not to renew what is necessary for the Israel to operate its Iron Dome. The Iron Dome being the missile defense system that shoots missiles up in the air. They shoot missiles at missiles, and this is how they intercepted the 4,300 at least rockets that have just been fired into Israel no later than last week. And so to vote against the Iron Dome, which is what Bernie Sanders did, is basically to condemn Israel to not be able to defend itself. And that is genocide, and that is the grossest type of anti-Semitism possible. And we need to open people's eyes with that. I know that a lot of Jewish people are still resisting, but a lot of them are not. Once they find out the truth and they realize how the left has abandoned them completely, their vote is at this point irrelevant. Irrelevant. There are less than 2% of the population in the United States, less than 0.002% of the population of the world. The Jewish vote to the left at this point means nothing. The left has allied themselves with Palestinians and the Black Lives Matter movement.
But can you understand what we're doing? We're being told, yeah, replenish your Iron Dome. A country that lives free, that allows Muslims to serve in the Knesset, that allows gays and LGBTQ community to live there in harmony, the largest gay pride in Tel Aviv. But we're only allowed to defend ourselves when these missiles are coming in. It doesn't make sense.
Right, how can you, 4,300 missiles were fired at Israel, and the only reason why they didn't touch land and they didn't kill Jewish people is because of the Iron Dome. And now
Sure, but
these traitors, these morons want to eliminate the Iron Dome for Israel. This is what Bernie Sanders proposes.
So that's an interesting connection between that, as you said, the LGBTQ community and the way they are finding themselves allied with radical Islam, which is what we have experienced, unfortunately, on our own skin, and we understand the kind of threat it poses. And you have mentioned some of these congresswomen who are really driving the narrative of the Democratic Party. But how are the two finding that common ground? Because really, at the forefront, they have nothing in common.
Oh, but Sharia and communism, Sharia and hardcore communism have a lot in common.
That, yes.
It's the same ideology. It's the same pattern of an ideology.
And it's a political ideology.
Yes,
it's not
absolutely.
Just based in faith.
Absolutely.
It's a political ideology, and
Correct.
it controls every aspect of your life.
Which makes it interesting. I want you to see things through my lens now that you say that. Anti-Semitism with Jewish organizations that refuse to call it modern day anti-Semitism, which is political. They want to make it bipartisan and just like a love fest. If you don't call out your enemy and identify who your enemy is, how can you defeat your enemy? This is a political ideology. It's not religion. Islam's not religion. It's a political. So, right. And the anti-Semitism, this modern day anti-Semitism, it is political. Look at the Democrat Party. I mean, how do you? They want to combat this. Like, and anti-Semitism is like whack-a-mole. It pops up every generation and you have to just keep putting a lid on it. But the truth of the matter is that it is political. And organization is recognizing that and doing something about it. And everybody wants to tiptoe around us because they don't like that message. They don't like it because the truth hurts.
The form of control that comes through Sharia, the form of population control, and the typical, the thought process, the fear, the terror, the policing, this is how it is in communism.
Understood.
Yeah.
But now let's turn to Europe, because we have those European connections, and it seems that the Europeans have sort of swallowed the pill, and there isn't really that spark of freedom really in Europe, where everybody's still looking towards the United States and thinking, okay, there is something rebellious still amongst the Americans, and the world is certainly looking towards us. But the Europeans have swallowed that hard pill, and there isn't anybody really standing up anymore. But what was interesting, and I have to go back to the Balkans and to that 1999 when Serbia was being bombed by NATO and under the Bill Clinton administration, what was really painful for the Serbs was actually having some Jewish people, and including Bernie Sanders, who were in support of bombing a Christian nation in the middle of Europe. And certain Serbs could not actually understand why they, having this historical alliance with the Jewish people, struggling together, why they would turn their backs on us. But that seems an interesting point that both of you bring up. They're not loyal to their Judaism. They're actually loyal to only the ideology of the Democratic Party.
Correct.
And that is what drives it. And I think it's important to even mention some of these people who they don't operate on the level of based on their faith. They operate only based on what the party tells them.
Well, that's their religion. The party is their religion.
It's their religion.
But no,
their
I
ideology.
want to ask you about what we all perceive as the strongest Jewish lobby, which is AIPAC. Is AIPAC successful in balancing out this bipartisan element where we want both sides to be supportive of Israel, where Israel is our closest enemy?
AIPAC is leaning to the left.
Okay.
And I
So-
think we have to remember that these large organizations operate differently than grassroots movements
Sure.
such as ourselves.
Correct.
And they have to tread the water of pleasing both their donors on both sides, hedging their bets, saying it, but not really being, too forthcoming with it. Of course, we want this. Of course, we want that. I think that by their nature alone, they're forced into conforming to a more mild dialogue, but we don't
More
have to
diplomatic.
undermine- Right,
Absolutely.
which they think is
Politics.
diplomatic, but
Sure.
we've lost.
Politics.
The Democrats were voting against Israel defending itself. And I think that coming down to that bottom line, no Jewish organization at this point should look at that and take it lightly and pretend that it's not happening. Very dangerous. We're talking about killing 6 million people.
Sure. And
When a liaison to the White House tweeted that the Jews should remove their symbols so that they should remain.
that was my next question, because we all remember, I remember as a girl when I was a teenager, I would wear a cross and Muslims would not be happy about that. And they would say all kinds of things to me. But now for somebody who is at the State Department and who should be promoting the interests of the Jewish people to say, well, hide your kippah, don't wear it. Don't
Right.
put it out there. Well, what is happening, not just in the United States, but around the world with the religious freedoms? President Trump really campaigned strongly on that. Now, are the religious freedoms not just of the Jews? We mentioned Hagia Sophia and what's happening around the world. The Jews and the Christians seem to be attacked all at the same time.
You have to remove God from the public square in order for the government to have full control.
That is true.
That
is true, and that is very scary.
Marxism 101. But I
The
pose
way-
another
If they can
Question.
have a
you want us
state-
to remove our,
Go on. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, you want us to remove a kippah. Does that mean if you're a Black, Asian, or Indian American that they should change the color of their skin? What's the difference? It's racism.
Sure,
It's
and it is
complete
something
racism,
that you
yes,
identify by.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But so I'd like to talk about the conflicts in the Middle East. And while President Trump was in office, certainly Middle East was much calmer. And we have had a change in the administration, and things are really all of a sudden spiraling out of control. Now, historically, let's talk about this struggle between the Palestinians and Jews, and what has happened. Of course, the Serbs, again, can identify by being under the Ottoman rule for 500 years. Talk about slavery, right? And reparations, and 500 years under the Islamic rule. So when the Arabs conquered Judea and Samaria and Palestine, essentially, what is the historical claim that people don't seem to understand here? What is at stake for the Jewish community?
Survival?
Mere survival, but having the Palestinians also, and again, any human life is something that we have to, of course, uphold. And what is interesting that the Palestinian children keep being pushed up front, and we've seen this through these wars in Bosnia, the schools and these civilian targets, and that's what comes through the media, right?
It's the propaganda.
That the schools are the propaganda, the schools are being attacked, and civilian buildings, and these buildings. But why are you there, in fact? Why are we hiding weapons and militants in these civilian buildings? Israel is operating on a completely different level, but that propaganda seems to be so strong and penetrating through the society, where Israel is accused of genocide and all kinds of crimes against humanity.
Fake news. I mean, that's where fake news comes in. You know, the left-wing media, the enemy of the people, picks up a story, and he who controls the definitions wins the argument. And so obviously they're blowing up these you know, literally they're taking these stories and distorting the truth, and they don't let the other side tell the truth. And so even though it seems illogical, and we look at it and we try to make sense of it, and we believe that there's some justice, that someone somewhere has got to show what's going on, the reality of the matter is they're silencing the truth, and they're only blasting through their stations what they want people to say and the way they want the conversation to move. And so if there's no counter point of view, as there isn't, then a lot of that truth gets lost.
Sure. And in the mainstream, certainly there is no narrative that you can hear both sides. That has been completely lost, and the mainstream has become actually not, there's no journalistic integrity. They are the activists worldwide of the specific agenda. Exactly.
Worldwide, yes.
Sure. And it is worldwide. And it's interesting when you, for instance, travel around different airports, you only see specific stations at the airports. You see CNN all day long, and that is all.
The contract is expiring.
But we're not. I mean, the part is that our government and uninformed Americans are supporting a designated terrorist organization. Let's talk about the core Palestinian people.
Yes, and let's address that. Absolutely.
Okay? I mean, but it's a designated terrorist organization, and that's who we're, I mean, why should we be negotiating with the terrorist organization in the first place?
Sure. Right. And the question consistently comes up, well, where did the Israel get money, and why are we sending foreign aid to Israel? But where did they get the money? Who paid for all these rockets that Sophia was mentioning? Where is that other money coming from? And nobody seems to raise that question. Yeah. Who is funding these attacks, right?
Right. Well, we know that it's Iran.
Yeah.
So, but of course, again, it all comes down to who's controlling the narrative. They're not going to tell the truth. Why would they?
So what is the path forward now, especially for your organization, and what is the path forward for the country? What do you see happening? Because we've seen terrible things coming out of New York, and you mentioned Nevada, and we've seen it in Los Angeles, where now people are just freely coming out and coming after the Jewish people on the street. I mean, nobody would think that this is possible, this would ever happen in the United States of America. And as you said, people don't realize it because somehow it's constantly removed from them. It doesn't seem like it's happening at their doorstep, but it's here. So what's the path forward?
The best way to describe it is that we are in a spiritual battle for the soul of this country, and it is a battle between good versus evil. Forget about Democrat, Republican. We are in a battle of good versus evil. We're seeing abortion at birth. We're seeing things that are just, that we've lost our moral compass.
We've lost the humanity. Yes.
Our moral compass. I mean, it's shocking.
The path forward, first of all, in you know, if we're going to be pragmatic and practical, first of all, everybody's got to read Alinsky Rules for Radicals, because if you read Alinsky Rules for Radicals, you understand how they fight, and you can fight the same way. And we stop going around in circles trying to find logic where there isn't any logic.
There isn't any, sure.
But the most important thing to do is to take back our local levels. We need precincts, we need school boards, we need committees, we need cities, we need mayorships. People have got to take interest at the local level. Forget the federal is gone right now. But what we have is we have the state and we have the local level. Most of our states still have conservative legislature. So that's a good thing. So they may be winning the cultural war, we're winning the legislative war. And people have got to take interest immediately in their precincts. In Broward alone, where we're at, there were 250 precincts that had no leadership. We're talking about 250,000 registered Republicans. These are not people who don't want to hear from you. These are people who need leadership.
Sure.
250,000 registered Republicans who did not have leadership because the precincts were not covered. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We need people to go and inquire and see what's going on at their local level. We need people to get involved in their school boards, even if you don't have children, if you're a business person. There is ways in which to be present in the school board, because that's where a lot of this infiltration begins. There's
Yes,
also,
through education.
Library boards. People don't mention library boards. That's where they vote to have, men coming in dresses read to children. Okay. Now, no offense, I feel for everyone. Every adult can live their lives, but leave the kids out of it. You don't talk to kids about death and about murder and about, in the same way you don't talk to them about sexual deviations. Let's just leave things alone. And so that's, we need to take our neighborhoods back, and we need to take our local precincts back. That's what we need to do.
So advocating for the grassroots involvement.
Everybody, yes.
Everybody.
If you got an hour of time a month, get off of Facebook, get involved in your community, find out where you can get voted in so you can vote and make a difference. Very important.
Sure.
Yeah.
Michelle,
what we did was we took the initiative. Sophia's didn't let you know, we started a new club called America First Patriots Club, because we recognize that there are Democrats and non-party affiliates. There are citizens that are unhappy with what's going on in their country. Yes. And we want to open up dialogue and communicate with them and give them, so we can find what unites us versus what divides us, and maybe find a common ground and recognize that we want America First policies. We just don't know how to go about working together for the common good and the common goal. So we opened up this club. It's not a Trump club. It's not a Republican club. It's an America First Patriots Club. And I think we will be able to, with what we're going to do, rallying and unify, behind unifying, we will get candidates in that will win, and we will, essentially move the needle enough to get our great governor reelected. I don't know if you know the history of also how we even came on the scene. We were the group of Jewish women that exposed the voter fraud in the 2018 election. We found the ballot ties that were snipped off of the boxes, and we uncovered the steal during that period that went as international. In fact, Hannity called me in the car, and we shared the whole story with him. And we had other counties and cities all over the country that were begging for us to come and help them. So we knew it was going to be a problem in 2020.
And that is interesting, knowing that this was going to be a problem. And we talked about it for the past 4 years. And I remember that coming out of Broward, and we, at least here in Florida, really cleaned up our election system. It happened on November 3rd. We were done by 10 p.m. and everything was crystal clear.
Correct.
But knowing that all of this was an issue, and how is it that there was no contingency plan? Even President Trump talked about it, that this would become a problem. And nothing happened, nothing came out of it. And I understand there are certain audits still happening in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, but what are your thoughts? Is anything going to change? Because again, on the grassroots level,
Yes.
we're looking towards 2022. We're looking to unite people. Same with the Jewish community, with the Serbian community. We want to have this coalition. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. We all want the same things. Do people trust now our election system? Is their vote going to count in 2020?
Well, it's going to count in Florida.
It's going to count in Florida in 2022.
I think a lot of governors are on board now with revising and enforcing election laws. I think that in regards to what you're saying, that, you know, what happened was overwhelming cheating, and they wouldn't stop.
Yes. And
It was overwhelming cheating, and they wouldn't stop. And then the courts, you know, the higher courts were afraid and allowed this to happen. There was so much fraud and so much manipulation that it was overwhelming. And I think that Trump held the fort and fought all the way until the end, and then he was betrayed at the end. If Pence had gone along with the plan, and if they hadn't staged this fake insurgency on the 6th, you know, if they hadn't done all of that, then we wouldn't be where we're at. But it all added up. It was all calculated. You know, we talk about January 6th. Just months before, Black Lives Matter and Antifa had entered the Capitol and were doing sleep-ins and laying on the floor. And so when patriots were allowed, and now we have the footage, when patriots were actually allowed to enter the Capitol, and all of a sudden it's an insurgency. Because again, you know, victory is dictated by those who control the narrative, and they try to make of that something that it was not. So, you know, we're looking at a mountain of cheating and of lies, and patriots know. And it's important to, you know, register people to vote, because there's a lot of people out there who are not registered to vote, who
Yes.
would never vote for Joe Biden, who would, you know, who see what's going on. And so that's another thing that we need to do.
So as organizations now, and through the new club, the Patriot Club that you started, you have, I believe, an event coming up in June that
Yes.
we could announce.
Before we tell you about that, I want to tell
Sure.
you about the success that we had, and this speaks for itself, and we are very proud. In 2016, the Jewish vote for President Trump was 20 in the state of Florida was 29%. Jexit was founded in 2018. In 2020, the Jewish vote for President Trump was 43%. It can be done. And so now we're going to move our efforts to, you know, 2022, re-electing DeSantis. And we have a great event on Scott Pressler and Siggy Flicker, our spokesperson. And we are going to just start from scratch and get these, you know, precincts filled, rally behind candidates, and we are going to keep Broward, you know, we're going to expose the, you know, the rhinos, if you will. We are going to keep, you know, bring the truth, if we can, as best we can, to the community. And everybody's getting on board. We're getting tremendous support. Wouldn't you say that, Sophia?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you get a chance, you know, if you're in the Broward area, go look at AmericaFirstPatriotsClub.com. AmericaFirstPatriotsClub.com. Look under events and proceed from there. Get yourselves a ticket and come see our speakers. It's going to be a fun night. That's the second Tuesday of the month in June 8th. And
we will have all that information under the interview. So we'll make sure that we send it out and everybody is aware of the organization so they can follow you. And we're going to do some great work together, getting our communities together and rallying together, because certainly a lot is at stake and we have lived through it. So we understand firsthand how this can spiral out of control, and it already is. So we're going to do it together. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us today. And I am sure we are going to hear again from you and do some great things together. Anything you want to tell our listeners and viewers that we didn't touch upon?
I just want to say that we
Really
admire you. and
excited
trust
to work with you.
pieces.
Thank
You
you.
are you are so informant. You have so much knowledge and so much
Yes.
class. We're very, very blessed to call you our friend and
Yes.
Thank you.
associate. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Likewise, I am so happy that we are now working together and we're going to do some great things and accomplish wonderful things for our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. God bless
We'll
everyone.
talk soon. God bless you.
God bless.